Hey, how's it going? My name is James, and today on the channel, we're going to be reviewing Howling Dark by Christopher Ruocchio, the second book in the Sun Eater series. Right off the bat, I enjoyed this so much more than Empire of Silence. And if you watched my Empire of Silence review, a big reason that I struggled with that book maybe was because I listened to it on audio and the narrator just did not click for me. So it was really a struggle kind of getting through that first book because, like I said, I didn't really want to listen to it that much. I found the story engaging, but I kind of struggled with the narrator. That was not a problem at all with this book. Right off the rip, I mean, the book starts on a much more interesting note. I found just the direction that the plot went a lot more interesting than the first book. There was a lot more happening that I felt was unique and interesting, and I really feel like that this is the book where the series kind of feels like it's stepping into its own a little bit. The first book, I said that it felt a lot like The Name of the Wind. It felt a lot like Dune. A lot of the ways that Hadrian talks about himself kind of reminds me of the ways that Kvothe talks about himself, and then kind of just some of the world building and the pretense around who Hadrian is felt a lot like Paul from Dune and felt a lot like the world building from Dune, which I don't think that those are bad things. I like both of those books, but this book felt a lot more original. I really feel like that Ruocchio kind of came into his own and had established the world, didn't have to worry about any of that, even though there was a good chunk of this book that is kind of world building, because the world expands so much in this book that I do feel like that he really kind of just got to play in the world that he had already made a little bit. And so for that, I loved it way more than I enjoyed Empire of Silence. The book starts with this massive time skip and pushes Hadrian far into the future. Well, maybe not super far as like how time actually works in this universe, but really far for a second book in a series. I actually found it to be really engaging to me. A lot of people were saying that the beginning of this book is super disorienting and really confusing, and I kind of agree with that, but I don't think it's a bad thing because the book kind of starts in a confusing and disorienting manner. And so I think the fact that Hadrian is a little disoriented and confused makes it a little okay that we are disoriented and confused coming into the beginning of this book. You are kind of just spending a little bit of time getting up to speed. Once the overarching plot of the book really starts to get traction, it's very, very gripping. I feel like that this was the book that sold me on the world. Like, it sold me on the scope of the plot, you know, because the series starts with Hadrian saying, I killed 4 billion people and exterminated an alien race. And then you are on Delos. And so the first book was very much like, here is this very huge statement, right? Like this just massive mic drop statement of I killed 4 billion people, exterminated an entire alien race. But then you get the origin story, right? And so the first book sells you on Hadrian. This book sells me on the idea that is where this series is moving. I think that this is the book that, and I know it's the second book, but this is the book that bought me in on the scope of that plot, right? Because by the end of the first book, I wasn't convinced that it was going to scale proportionally to those events. By the end of this book, it showed me Ruocchio's ability to handle these complex ideas, but make them so believable in this world, right? Like, I didn't know by the end of Empire of Silence if I was going to be bought into that idea to where it was going to be believable that Hadrian did this and it doesn't feel like undeserved, I guess. Like that he accomplished this feat and it was undeserved. This first part of the review has been kind of non-spoilery. I'm kind of trying to be, again, vague because I think that this series I think that this series is worth your time. That being said, I do kind of want to talk spoilers because the other thing that in that Grimoire Discord, the other thing that I kept hearing people say, as people who are much faster readers than I am were finishing this book, kept talking about it pops off, it pops off, it pops off. And it pops off. It really does. And so I kind of want to talk about the events of the end of the book a little bit. And so a lot of that will be, I'm going to tag that in the chapter below as spoilers. And I'm just going to chat about that for a little bit. So here's your warning. 3, 2, 1, spoiler time. I really thought that I had my finger on the pulse of this series as a spacefaring science fiction opera, and it is those things. But I thought that I had it a lot more nailed down as being like, this is a mercenary style adventure novel. Like at the beginning of this book, that's what I thought that it was going. And I love mercenaries, and so I was hooked whenever they were like, he's got a mercenary company, he's adventuring through the stars, he's looking for this planet. The quest narrative of like trying to find this lost mythical planet, I was hooked. I loved it. But the second he gets to Vorgosos and everything kind of turns cosmic horror-y, holy crap, this book, it was good. It was good all the way up to that point. In fact, there is a paragraph in this book that is one of my, like, I have not stopped thinking about it since I read it. And it's just beautifully written. It's very philosophical. It's very deep. I thought a lot about the statement that Hadrian made. And it, like I said, it was just beautifully written. And so the book up to that point is very high quality. It's very good. I was engaged. I was gripped with the plot. But Vorgosos becomes, it's almost like an entirely different book, but not in a bad way at all. It just completely subverted my expectations. Basically, like, to get even more zeroed in on the stuff that I want to talk about, when Hadrian and Valka go into the garden and they discover this entire subterranean portion, the inverted pyramid of Vorgosos underneath the city itself. They meet the exalted scientist who is kind of growing the clones for Karn Sagara. Like, just the imagery, the atmosphere, the just creepy vibes through the whole thing. Ruocchio had me he had me from the beginning of the book. It was a good book, but at that point, I was locked in. Like, I was like, I am finishing this book. I want to know what is happening here. Brethren is one of the most interesting conceptions and forms of imagination, like this artificial AI born out of human souls and life, or whatever. The Americani, I think that is such an interesting part of this universe. Like, there are going to be lore videos about this series. Like, you think of channels like Quinn's Ideas, like the Dune Guide, there will be lore videos about Sun Eater. I probably won't make them because I suck at deep diving that, but I will watch them. I will watch people explain the Americani. And I love that the Cielsen are so alien. I love that Ruocchio is like, they aren't another culture that still developed with human morals and human ideals. I love that they are so primal and that they are so, like, he has this whole monologue with himself about, like, the Tigris monologue was another one of my just favorite passages, where he's talking about, like, is the Tigris evil because it hunts and it kills its prey? Just those philosophical moments sold me on the idea that Ruocchio is an author that can handle a plot that can go to that scale. And I think that this is truly incredible. There are so many different monologues, so many different philosophical discussions about the nature of evil, about the nature of our humanity. Like, the passage that I was talking about earlier just made me think about our humanity so much, and was very philosophical. I found it very theological. You really should just read these books. They are so worth your time. You want to talk about a series that, even though it seems like it's kind of blowing up on BookTube, on book like communities where people are kind of in the know with science fiction and fantasy books, like, a wider audience needs to be exposed to this series, because I truly think that it is great and it is worth your time. I feel like that any more that I could say would just be rambling about specific passages that are just stuck in my head, like just these specific spots that are just really narrowed in. And so this probably wasn't even the most informative review or the most well articulated or accurate review, but man, whenever I say that I loved this book, it really did pop off. It really did hit, and it was really great. So wrapping things up, should you read Howling Dark? Well, if you made it through Empire of Silence, absolutely. Like, again, not that I think that Empire of Silence is a bad book at all, but this book is incredible. Incredible. One of the best books I've read this year. Honestly, at this point, it might be contending for my favorite book this year if I hadn't read Royal Assassin this year. If I hadn't read Royal Assassin, this probably would have been my favorite. I'm so excited to continue reading Demon in White this month and just continue to see where Ruocchio takes this story. Because like I said, I went into this book expecting it to go one way. It took a turn, it took another turn, and then it just drove off a cliff. I mean, in the best way possible. And I was just happy to be along for the ride. I hope you enjoyed this video. I know that a lot of it was spoiler-filled rambling, but I just had thoughts in my head that I just had to express them. So I hope that if you read Howling Dark, that you enjoyed it. If you haven't read Howling Dark or you plan to read it, let me know in the comments. Let me know if you plan on reading Sun Eater at all. This is quickly becoming one of my favorite series to just dig into right now, and I'm really excited to finish it out. If this is your first time here, be sure to like, subscribe, comment, do all of the YouTuber-y things down below, and I think that's all I got. So I'll catch you in the next one.